The grand ballroom doors swung open with a force that silenced 300 wedding guests mid-conversation. Sarah Mitchell stood framed in the entrance, not hunched in the wheelchair her ex-husband expected, but standing tall in a designer gown that cost more than most cars. Her ex-husband Marcus's face drained of all color. Beside him, her former best friend Lisa swayed in her wedding dress, the bouquet trembling in her shaking hands. Sarah walked down the aisle, her heels clicking against marble with each confident step. 6 security personnel moved with her like shadows, their presence commanding respect and raising questions throughout the stunned crowd. "Is that Sarah Mitchell?" someone whispered. "She's walking? I thought she was paralyzed. Wasn't her fashion empire bankrupt?" The wedding coordinator stumbled forward, microphone in hand. "Miss Mitchell, would you like to address the guests?" Sarah's fingers closed around the microphone. She looked at Marcus, then at Lisa, then at the room full of investors who had built relationships with her ex-husband over the past year. She smiled. "Thank you for this opportunity," she said, her voice steady and clear. "When I received the invitation to this wedding, I felt compelled to attend. You see, I believe it's important to witness moments of truth. And today, we're all going to witness several very important truths. What happened next would destroy everything Marcus had built on betrayal and stolen money. But to understand how we got here, we need to go back 14 months, to the hospital room where Sarah's husband told her she was nothing but a dead weight. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more incredible stories of justice and resilience. Drop a comment telling us, what would you have done in Sarah's situation? Hit that notification bell so you never miss our next powerful story. Sarah Mitchell lay motionless in the hospital bed, her legs unresponsive beneath crisp white sheets. Through the window, Seattle's skyline glittered in the afternoon sun, beautiful and distant. The accident had happened 5 days ago, a delivery truck running a red light, the impact at 60 miles per hour, her car spinning 3 times before slamming into a concrete barrier. The doctors had been clear, severe spinal trauma. She would likely never walk again. The news had been equally devastating. Her mother's fashion empire, 40 years of building one of Seattle's most prestigious design houses, had collapsed into bankruptcy. Every asset liquidated, the legacy reduced to nothing. And now Marcus stood at the foot of her bed, divorce papers in one hand and Lisa's hand in the other. "I can't do this, Sarah," Marcus said, each word cutting like broken glass. "I can't spend the rest of my life taking care of someone who can't even stand up, someone who's lost everything." Lisa stepped closer, her manicured hand resting possessively on Marcus's arm. The familiarity in that touch told Sarah everything about how long this betrayal had been unfolding. "This is really for the best," Lisa added, her voice dripping with false compassion. "You need to focus on your recovery, and Marcus needs to move forward with his life." Sarah's hand trembled as she reached for the pen, not from weakness, but from the fury she was fighting to contain. She signed, one signature that ended 7 years of marriage. Marcus took the papers without meeting her eyes, checked the signature with businesslike efficiency, then turned to leave. Lisa paused at the door, glancing back with an expression that almost looked like pity. "I hope you find peace, Sarah," she said quietly. Then they left together, Marcus's arm wrapped around Lisa's waist, their bodies fitting perfectly as the door clicked shut behind them. Sarah stared at the ceiling, her mind already working. What Marcus didn't know, what nobody knew yet, was that 30 minutes before he'd walked in with those divorce papers, she'd overheard something that changed everything. 30 minutes earlier, Sarah had woken from her medication-induced sleep to the sound of Marcus's voice in the hallway. At first, she thought he was talking to a doctor about her condition. Then she heard her best friend's name. "I'm at the hospital," Marcus said, his voice low but clear through the partially open door. "She's sleeping. How does she look?" Lisa's voice came through his phone speaker. "Broken," Marcus replied. "The doctors haven't given me the full report yet, but from what the paramedics said, the spinal damage is severe." There was a pause. Sarah lay perfectly still, her heart pounding. "What are you thinking?" Lisa asked carefully. Marcus's next words would replay in Sarah's mind for months to come. "Honestly," his voice dropped even lower, "I wish she died in the accident." Sarah's breath caught in her throat. "If she died," Marcus continued, "the whole empire would be mine. No divorce, No fighting over assets, no splitting everything in half. Just mine. Clean and simple. But she didn't die, Lisa said quietly. No, Marcus agreed, frustration bleeding into his tone. Which means I'm stuck going through a divorce, fighting her lawyers for months, or maybe years, just to get what should rightfully be half mine anyway. The stress, the public scrutiny, the media coverage, it's going to be a nightmare. Maybe this changes things, Lisa suggested. If she's badly injured, if she can't run the company anymore. I still have to divorce her to get anything, Marcus interrupted. I still have to go through the legal process. The only difference is now I look like the bastard who abandoned his crippled wife instead of just a man leaving an unhappy marriage. Sarah's eyes had opened then, her mind crystallizing around a single, cold thought. He wanted me dead for money. Marcus ended his call and returned to the room, his expression shifting into concern as he approached her bed. Sarah had closed her eyes immediately, controlling her breathing, giving no sign that she'd heard anything. "Sarah," he'd said softly, placing his hand on her arm. "I'm here now. Everything's going to be okay." The touch had made her skin crawl. Now, as she watched him leave with Lisa's hand in his, Sarah reached for her phone with steady fingers. She had calls to make, plans to set in motion, and a trap to build. Marcus thought he'd escaped a Deadweight. He had no idea what was coming. Sarah made the call from her hospital bed the next morning, her voice steady despite the pain medication making her thoughts feel distant. 5 people joined the video conference. Thomas Rivera, the company lawyer, David Chun, her accountant, Patricia Santos, the financial analyst, Robert Klein, the general manager, and Michelle Torres, her personal assistant. "Mrs. Mitchell," Thomas said, concern evident. "We heard about the accident. How are you?" "I need you to make Mitchell Fashion House look bankrupt," Sarah interrupted, her words precise and deliberate. "Every news outlet needs to report that the company has collapsed. Total liquidation. Debts overwhelming assets. The whole empire crumbling." Silence filled the line. "Sarah," Thomas said carefully, "do you understand what you're asking? The stock price alone would." "None of it will be real," Sarah clarified. "I need you to work as a team to create the appearance of bankruptcy while protecting every actual asset. Trusts, offshore accounts, shell corporations, whatever it takes. But to the outside world, to the media, to anyone investigating, Mitchell Fashion House needs to look completely destroyed." Another pause. "May we ask why?" Patricia ventured. "I need to know who my husband really is," Sarah said quietly. "And I already have my answer. Now I need to protect what my mother built before Marcus tries to take it." David spoke next. "When do you need this done?" "Immediately," Sarah replied. "And there's one more thing. Our joint account has $2 million in it. I want you to monitor it. Don't freeze it. Don't protect it. Just watch. I need to see what he does." "You're testing him," Robert said, understanding dawning. "I already know he'll fail," Sarah answered. "I just need documentation for what comes next." Over the next 3 days, her team worked with precision that would have made her mother proud. Financial documents were created, falsified bankruptcy filings prepared, and carefully worded press releases distributed to every major business outlet. The coverage was perfect, devastating analyses of how Mitchell Fashion House had overextended itself, how debts had mounted secretly, how the sudden incapacitation of its leader had exposed fundamental weaknesses. None of it was true, but the documents were flawless, convincing enough to fool even sophisticated investors. On the 4th day, Patricia called with news. "He emptied the joint account this morning," she said. "All $2 million. Wire transfer to an account in his name only." Sarah closed her eyes. The confirmation landed like a physical blow, even though she'd expected exactly this. "Thank you," she said quietly. "Sarah," Patricia's voice was gentle. "I'm sorry." "Don't be," Sarah replied. "You're helping me see clearly for the first time in years." Dr. Elena Vasquez sat beside Sarah's hospital bed with kind eyes and a gentle manner that made difficult conversations easier. "I need to know the truth about my legs," Sarah said. "Will I be able to walk again?" Dr. Vasquez took Sarah's hand. "The swelling around your spine needs to reduce before we can make a definitive assessment, but I'm cautiously optimistic." With intensive physical therapy and time, there's a very good chance you'll regain most of your mobility. Maybe even full recovery. Relief flooded through Sarah, followed immediately by calculation. When my husband comes back, Sarah said carefully, I need you to tell him something different. Dr. Vasquez's expression shifted to confusion. I don't understand. Tell him I'll be confined to a wheelchair for the rest of my life, Sarah said. Tell him the damage is permanent and irreversible. Mrs. Mitchell, I can't lie to your husband about your medical condition. I'm not asking you to lie, Sarah said, though they both knew that's exactly what she was asking. I'm asking you to give him the worst-case scenario while we wait for more information. I need to know something about him, about how he'll react. Please. Dr. Vasquez studied her for a long moment. Something in Sarah's expression must have conveyed her desperation. This is highly irregular, the doctor said finally. I know, Sarah replied. But please, I'm begging you. After a pause that felt like an eternity, Dr. Vasquez nodded slowly. I'll present it as the most likely outcome based on preliminary scans. But Mrs. Mitchell, whatever you're planning. Thank you, Sarah interrupted, unwilling to discuss her motivations. When Marcus returned to the hospital that evening, his first visit in 3 days, Dr. Vasquez delivered the news with professional gravity. Mr. Mitchell, I need to discuss your wife's prognosis. They stepped into the hallway, and Sarah listened through the partially open door as the doctor explained in carefully chosen words that the spinal damage appeared severe, that Sarah would likely never walk again, that he should prepare for significant lifestyle changes. Marcus's response was telling in its brevity. I see, he said, his voice flat. Thank you, doctor. No questions about treatment options. No inquiries about therapy or experimental procedures. No desperation to explore every possible avenue for recovery. Just cold acceptance of information that serve his purposes perfectly. Sarah closed her eyes and finalized her plan. The trap was set. Now she just needed to wait for Marcus to walk into it. Marcus came to the hospital 1 week after the accident. He didn't come alone. Lisa walked beside him, her hand resting on his arm with a possessiveness that screamed ownership. They entered Sarah's room together, and the sight of them, her husband and her best friend, united against her, crystallized everything. Sarah, Marcus said, his voice businesslike. We need to talk. He pulled divorce papers from inside his jacket and dropped them onto her lap. You can't walk anymore, he continued, each word chosen to wound. The doctors were clear about that. And according to every news station in the country, your mother's company just collapsed. Total bankruptcy. Everything liquidated. He leaned forward slightly. I can't spend the rest of my life tied to a crippled deadweight who brings nothing to this marriage. You're broken, Sarah. Physically. Financially. Completely broken. Lisa's expression held false sympathy. This is really for the best. You need to focus on your recovery, and Marcus needs to move forward with someone who can actually be a partner to him. The irony of her best friend calling herself a partner while stealing her husband wasn't lost on Sarah. Sign the papers, Marcus said. Let's end this cleanly. Sarah's hand trembled, not from weakness, but from containing everything she wanted to say. She signed without speaking, her name ending a marriage that had died the moment Marcus wished for her death. Marcus took the papers without looking at her face, checked the signature with casual efficiency, then turned to leave. Lisa paused at the door. I hope you find some peace, Sarah. Then they left together, Marcus's arm around Lisa's waist, the door clicking shut behind them. Sarah stared at the ceiling and began her recovery with fierce determination. Over the next month, the divorce was finalized. Sarah didn't contest anything, didn't fight for assets or make demands. She simply let Marcus walk away with his clean break and his $2 million. Marcus used the money to start a real estate development company in Tacoma, about 40 miles south. Somewhere he and Lisa could build their new life away from the wreckage of Sarah's destruction. The company grew modestly over the following year. Marcus positioned himself as a successful entrepreneur who'd escaped a failing marriage and built something from nothing, conveniently omitting the $2 million in stolen funds that had financed his fresh start. Meanwhile, Sarah worked in secret. Physical therapy 5 hours a day, strengthening exercises, learning to walk again with a determination that surprised even her therapists. You're making remarkable progress, her physical therapist said during month 6. At this rate, you'll be walking without assistance in another few months. Sarah smiled. Good. I have somewhere important to be. 12 months after the divorce, an envelope arrived at Sarah's new apartment, a penthouse she'd secretly purchased under a shell corporation. The envelope was thick, expensive, cream-colored with gold lettering. Inside, a wedding invitation. Marcus Mitchell and Lisa Chen request the honor of your presence at their wedding. Tucked inside was a handwritten note in Lisa's distinctive handwriting. Sarah, we'd be honored if you could join us. We know it's been a difficult year for you, but we wanted to include you in our happiness. The venue is fully accessible for wheelchairs. We made certain of that. Please come and see what real love looks like. The cruelty was exquisite, perfectly crafted. They wanted her there, broken and defeated in her wheelchair, to validate their happiness by contrast. Sarah read the note 3 times, each word stoking the cold fire that had been building in her chest for a year. She picked up her phone and called Michelle. Book the private jet, she said. Arrange full security detail. And prepare my car. I have a wedding to attend. Are you sure about this? Michelle asked carefully. Absolutely certain, Sarah replied. It's time they learn the truth. Over the next 2 weeks, Sarah prepared with military precision. She selected a Valentino gown in silver that cost $40,000. She hired 6 former Secret Service agents for security. She coordinated with Thomas to prepare certain documents that might be needed. The night before the wedding, she stood in front of her mirror, walking in the heels she'd spent months learning to balance in again. You've got this, she told her reflection. Her legs were strong. Her mind was sharper. And tomorrow, she would walk into that wedding and destroy everything Marcus had built on her pain. The private jet was fueled and ready. The security team briefed and prepared. The gown packed carefully in its garment bag. Sarah Mitchell was about to make an entrance that would change everything. The deadweight they discarded was coming back. And she was walking. The wedding venue was a converted industrial space in Tacoma, exposed brick, soaring ceilings, Edison bulbs hanging from chains. 300 guests filled white chairs arranged in perfect rows. In the bridal suite, Lisa adjusted her veil one final time, her hands trembling slightly. Do you think she'll actually come? She asked Marcus, who was checking his reflection in a full-length mirror. Probably not, Marcus replied, straightening his tie. She's too proud to let people see her like that. Broken. Bankrupt. In a wheelchair. He turned to Lisa with satisfaction in his eyes. But if she does show up, everyone here will see exactly what I escaped from. They'll see the difference between a dead weight and a real partner. Lisa smiled, though doubt flickered across her face. What if she makes a scene? Marcus laughed, cold and dismissive. What's she going to do? She's crippled and penniless. We hold all the cards now. The ceremony was minutes from starting. Guests settled into their seats. The string quartet began playing a classical prelude. Then someone near the entrance made a sound, something between a gasp and a choke. Another guest turned, eyes widening. The whisper started, rippling through the assembled crowd like a stone dropped in still water. The string quartet faltered. One violinist missed a note, then another, until the music died entirely as all 4 musicians turned to stare. Marcus felt it before he saw it. The shift in the room's energy, the way every head turned toward the entrance, the sudden silence that fell like a heavy blanket. He turned, irritation flashing across his face. Then he froze. The doors stood open. Sarah Mitchell walked through them. Walked. Not in a wheelchair. Not using a cane. Not struggling or limping. Walking on legs that moved with perfect grace and confidence, wearing a gown that shimmered like liquid silver, her hair styled in elegant waves, surrounded by 6 men in dark suits who moved with military precision. She walked down the aisle, the same aisle Lisa was supposed to walk down, and every eye in the venue followed her. Is that Sarah Mitchell? She's walking. I thought she was paralyzed. Wasn't her company bankrupt? That dress is Valentino. How can she afford that? Marcus's face drained of all color. His mouth opened and closed without sound. Beside him, Lisa swayed, her bouquet trembling in hands that had gone numb. Sarah reached the front of the venue and stopped, her eyes finding Marcus across the space. Her expression was serene, composed, absolutely terrifying in its calm. The wedding coordinator stumbled forward, microphone in hand, his face pale. "Miss Mitchell," he stammered. We weren't expecting you. Would you like to say a few words?" Sarah's fingers closed around the microphone with practiced ease. She turned to face the assembled guests, her security detail positioned discreetly behind her. She smiled. "Thank you," she said, her voice clear and strong. "I apologize for the interruption, but when I received the invitation to this wedding, I felt compelled to attend." Marcus tried to speak, but his voice came out as barely a whisper. "Sarah!" "You see," Sarah continued, ignoring him completely, "I believe it's important to witness moments of truth. And today, we're all going to witness several very important truths." She paused, watching as phones began emerging from pockets and purses throughout the crowd. 14 months ago, I was in a car accident," Sarah said. "Severe spinal trauma. The doctors initially thought I might never walk again." Her eyes found Marcus. "My husband at the time, the groom standing before you, visited me in the hospital exactly once. During that visit, I overheard him on the phone outside my room, telling his girlfriend that he wished I had died in the accident. Because then, you see, he could inherit my mother's empire without the stress of divorce proceedings." Gasps rippled through the crowd like a wave. Lisa's face went white. "That girlfriend," Sarah continued calmly, "was my best friend since college. The woman who is currently wearing a white dress and standing beside him." She turned to address the crowd more fully. "What my husband didn't know, what neither of them knew, was that I heard every word. And in that moment, I made several decisions." Sarah's smile never wavered. "First, I asked my doctors to tell him my condition was permanent and irreversible. I wanted to see what kind of man I'd married. Would he stay? Would he support me through recovery? Or would he run?" She paused for effect. "He ran. He divorced me while I lay in a hospital bed, calling me a crippled deadweight in front of medical staff. Then he took every cent from our joint account, $2 million, and left me with nothing." Marcus finally found his voice. "That's not. The company was bankrupt. You had nothing." "Ah, yes," Sarah interrupted smoothly. "The bankruptcy. That was my second decision." Sarah's voice carried throughout the silent venue, every word landing with precision. "I instructed my lawyers to create the appearance of total financial collapse," she explained. "Every news outlet reported it. Every financial analyst believed it. And most importantly, you believed it." She gestured to her security detail. "But Mitchell Fashion House never actually failed. Every asset was protected in trusts and offshore accounts. Every employee kept their job. Every contract was honored. The bankruptcy was theater, performed specifically for an audience of 2 people who were planning to steal half of my mother's legacy." The crowd was completely silent now, every eye fixed on Sarah. "The $2 million Marcus took from our joint account," Sarah continued. "That was a test. Money I left deliberately accessible to see if he would steal from someone he believed was crippled and penniless." She turned back to Marcus, whose face had gone from white to a sickly gray. "He took every cent within hours of the bankruptcy news breaking. That money financed the company you've spent the last year building, didn't it, Marcus? The company you've told everyone you started from nothing. The company that's currently negotiating contracts with several people in this room." Marcus's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Sarah addressed the crowd again. "I'm here today not for revenge, though I won't pretend this doesn't feel satisfying. I'm here to deliver a message about character, about loyalty, about what happens when you abandon people during their darkest moments and build your success on cruelty and theft." She let her words sink in. "Never trust a man who abandons his wife in a hospital bed. Never trust a woman who steals her best friend's husband while that friend fights for recovery. And never, ever, build a business relationship with people whose foundation is betrayal. Because if they'll do it to someone they vow to love, they'll certainly do it to you." Throughout the crowd, phones were recording, typing furiously, posting to social media in real time. One man in the third row stood up. "Marcus, we need to talk about our contract." "Immediately." Another rose. "The investment we discussed, I'm going to have to reconsider." Then another, and another. The venue erupted in whispered conversations, hurried phone calls, the sound of business relationships dissolving in real time. Lisa reached for Marcus's arm, tears streaking her makeup. "Marcus, do something!" But there was nothing to do. Sarah handed the microphone back to the coordinator and turned to leave, her security detail falling into formation around her. Sarah walked back down the aisle with her head high, her steps confident, leaving chaos and destruction in her wake. Behind her, she heard Lisa's voice rising in panic, heard Marcus trying desperately to explain, to salvage something from the wreckage, to convince people that Sarah was lying or manipulating the truth. But the damage was done. Sarah settled into the back seat of her car, and her driver pulled away from the venue just as police cars approached. Someone had apparently reported the use of stolen funds, likely one of Marcus's now former investors looking to protect themselves from association with fraud. She pulled out her phone and called Thomas. "It's done," she said simply. "I'm watching it unfold on social media," Thomas replied, admiration in his voice. "Every business news outlet is covering it. Marcus Mitchell's company is finished. Multiple partners have already announced they're pulling out, and there are calls for investigation into the source of his startup funding." "Good," Sarah said quietly. "How do you feel?" Thomas asked. Sarah considered the question as her car merged onto the highway, carrying her away from the wedding that had transformed into a reckoning, away from the people who'd betrayed her, toward a future that was entirely her own. "Free," she said finally. "I feel free." The wedding venue behind her descended into complete chaos. Guests leaving in confusion. Vendors demanding payment Marcus could no longer guarantee. Investors making urgent calls to distance themselves from a man whose character had been exposed in the most public way possible. In the bridal suite, Lisa stood alone in her perfect wedding dress while outside, Marcus argued desperately with lawyers on his phone, trying to salvage something from the empire that had just collapsed around him. 3 months later, Marcus's company declared bankruptcy, this time for real. The investigation into his use of stolen funds resulted in criminal charges. He pleaded guilty to avoid trial, receiving 3 years in prison and an order to repay the $2 million he'd taken. Lisa left him 2 weeks after the wedding disaster, unable to handle the public humiliation and legal consequences. Sarah, meanwhile, revealed the truth about Mitchell Fashion House's bankruptcy in a carefully orchestrated press conference. The company's stock soared, new investors lined up, and Sarah became known not just as her mother's heir, but as a brilliant businesswoman in her own right. She never remarried, didn't need to. She had built an empire on strength, patience, and the understanding that true power comes not from revenge, but from refusing to let cruelty define your future. The Deadweight had walked back into their lives and proven she was anything but. The end. Thank you for watching this incredible journey of resilience and justice. If you love Sarah's story, please hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss our next powerful story. Give this video a thumbs up if you think Sarah handled this perfectly. And tell us in the comments, what was your favorite moment? What would you have done differently? Share this video with someone who needs to hear this message about strength and dignity. New stories every week. We'll see you in the next one.